Gandil has finally broken his silence, and what he's revealing is nothing short of explosive. You've probably heard about the Netflix documentary on Diddy that's been the subject of so much discussion. Well, according to Gan, the footage he brought in was so bombshell that they couldn't even air it. Now he claims he's ready to reveal everything 50 Cent couldn't show, and if what he says is true, it could completely shift the narrative we've all been fed. You clicked on this because you wanted the real story, the raw, unfiltered version, and that's exactly what Gene says he's bringing to the table. As Diddy's former bodyguard, who was present for so many pivotal moments, he's finally opening up. After years of staying quiet, he sat down for an exclusive interview and made it clear he's done keeping secrets. Gene claims he was originally supposed to be a key part of the Netflix documentary from the very beginning. He says he had a 45-minute conversation with 50 Cent. Everything seemed lined up until things took a turn. According to Gene, the director disrespected him, causing him to walk away from the project. Now Gene is revealing the stories that never made it onto the screen. Some of these revelations are seriously intense. Gene says he's ready to speak out about the City College tragedy, what he believes really happened with Kim Porter, and why certain high-profile celebrities allegedly wanted nothing to do with the documentary. Everything that 50 Cent couldn't include, Gene says he's ready to drop here without any filters. But before we dive into the shocking details, it's important to understand the heated situation behind the scenes, because this was way bigger than anyone realized. Recently, 50 Cent and Netflix released Sean Combs' The Reckoning, which shot straight to #1. Everyone is watching it, everyone is arguing about it, but what most people don't know is that some major stories never made it into the final cut. According to Gandil, the stuff that didn't make it is where things really get interesting. Gene, who spent years as Diddy's bodyguard, was there for it all: the parties, the chaos, the business moves, the danger, and the emotional fallout. He claims he's been holding on to footage and receipts for years, waiting for the perfect moment to finally share his side of the story.
Don't even be sad. I want to put her on blast because she was telling me, she was saying to me that what I was asking for was crazy and they wasn't spending money like that. I'm talking about you got footage, you got clothing, I was doing footage, I had pictures, all the stuff that I had, you could figure out a way to pay a brother and stuff like that. And then I was telling her about some prices that I've already received, and I had the invoices to show it. And then she was calling me like I was lying. I'm like, yo, who do you think you talking to? You know what I'm saying? And she was talking about, there's no way nobody paid. Nobody what? I say, first of all you people come with these documentaries and stuff, the first thing you tell me, y'all tell these people out here that y'all don't pay, and y'all pay. If you can make a picture look like $10,000, $15,000, you know what I'm saying? You can sit here and tell me that you're gonna pay me for my time sitting right down here with y'all. You understand? So then, one thing led to another, and I was like, all right, well then, F you, I spoke to 50, and then she said 50, and this is exact words that came out her mouth. 50 does not determine what goes in and go out of this documentary.
At first, Gene actually wanted to be part of 50 Cent's documentary. He felt it was finally time for the full truth to be revealed. However, when he sat down with director Alex Stapleton, the meeting quickly took a turn for the worse. Gene walked in ready to cooperate, but the vibe shifted, and he realized the project wasn't going in the direction he expected. Gene had every intention of approaching this the right way. He even tried to bring in two people who had known Diddy from the very beginning, Tim and Kirk Burrows. Together, they could have laid out the entire timeline, from the early hustle days to the street era and the empire Diddy eventually built. That would have been the full blueprint, according to Gene. Gene says he asked for $50,000 for the three of them as a package deal. Given the depth of the stories and historical context they could provide, he felt the price was more than fair. But this is where everything went off track. According to Gene, director Alex Stapleton hit him with an unexpected statement. She allegedly told him that 50 Cent had no control over the documentary, not the budget, not the payments, not even who gets included. She claimed his name was mostly there just to boost the project. Gene took that as a massive disrespect. He even showed her invoices from past documentaries to explain his usual rate. Instead of listening to him, Gene says she accused him of lying, which left him in shock. From his perspective, he had spent years protecting Diddy, witnessed intense situations, kept notes and footage, and now someone was acting like he was making everything up. To him, that was wild, and it didn't end there. While Gene was trying to secure a fair deal for the three of them, he later discovered that Kirk Burrows was allegedly negotiating his own separate deal behind the scenes. That's how the industry works, everyone trying to carve out their own lane. Gene wanted one unified agreement, but Kirk was already making moves on his own, so Gene chose to walk away. He decided not to be part of the documentary, and that's why many viewers feel like something is missing. The person who claims to hold the deepest timeline and receipts, the one who was there through it all, wasn't involved.
What I feel about the documentary, they left a whole lot of key things out. If they was gonna do something and they're gonna say in the reckoning of Sean Combs, the reckoning, or Diddy, the reckoning and stuff like that, it should have been a lot of people that we lost because of him. You know what I'm saying? It wasn't only Big, it wasn't only Tupac, you understand? For the atmosphere that he put those kids in. You got a guy named Anthony Wolf Jones, who was from Bad Boy, from its conception as doing security and being one of the financiers of Puff having to have some money to keep Big and Craig Mack around before he got to Clyde Davis.
Gene Deal says he's now ready to reveal everything that didn't make it onto Netflix, starting with something the documentary barely touched, how Bad Boy Records was really set up. This part explains a lot about what went down behind the scenes. Kirk Burroughs, the same man mentioned earlier, claims he owned 25% of Bad Boy from day one, while Diddy held the remaining 75%. But here's the twist Gene points out. The company wasn't registered in Diddy's name, it was reportedly under his mother, Janice Combs. Why structure it like that? Gene claims it was done to shield Diddy from potential legal liability. And once you hear the context, the whole picture starts to make sense. Before Bad Boy exploded, Diddy anticipated lawsuits following the City College tragedy, where 9 adults tragically lost their lives. Their families were preparing to take legal action, and Gene believes that's why Diddy didn't put his own name on the company. A cold business move, but a strategically smart one. But things didn't stop there. Gene says Diddy later wanted Kirk's 25% as well. According to what Kirk himself said in the documentary, Diddy allegedly showed up with a baseball bat, threatened him, and forced him to sign over his share. Kirk later tried suing in 2003, but the case was dismissed due to the statute of limitations. Just sit with that for a moment. Kirk helped build Bad Boy from the ground up, from the branding to the vision to the early grind. And according to his own account, he lost everything through intimidation and pressure. Kirk even said he ended up homeless at one point, while Diddy went on to become a billionaire from the empire they originally built together. The documentary briefly mentioned this situation, but barely scratched the surface. Gene Deal says he could have laid out the entire story, how Bad Boy was structured, why Diddy allegedly put the company under his mother's name, and how the entire setup was linked to legal pressure. None of that made the final cut, and it really makes you wonder what else was left out. But here's where things take a darker turn. Gene claims the documentary skipped an entire storyline involving Anthony Wolf Jones, a name with real weight in hip-hop history. Wolf was Bad Boy's head of security from the early days, long before the fame and mainstream deals. He was one of Diddy's most loyal protectors. According to Gene, Wolf knew everything happening behind the scenes. He knew who handled what, who got paid, and what went down at certain private events, the kind of things people only whisper about. Gene alleges that Diddy's decisions played a role in the chain of events that led to Wolf's death. That's a heavy claim, and Gene says it with full seriousness. He also insists the documentary team either didn't have the right intel or deliberately avoided digging deeper. Wolf was killed in a situation involving someone tied to BMF, the Black Mafia family, a group with a long, complicated history in hip-hop culture. Gene believes there's a clear connection between Wolf's death and the bigger story surrounding Diddy, but Netflix barely gave Wolf a moment, just a couple of photos, a quick mention, and then they moved on. Why skip something so major? Gene suggests it's because this is dangerous territory, real violence, real criminal networks, and real consequences. Netflix probably didn't want that kind of heat, and 50 Cent likely wasn't trying to stir something up that could spill into real life either. But Gene Deal says the story has to be told because, in his view, Wolf's death wasn't random. It connects to everything happening behind the scenes. Now, here's where the story really heats up. The documentary mentioned the City College tragedy, but according to Gene, they didn't even come close to showing the full picture. Gene says he was there that night, saw everything firsthand, and his account completely shifts how people understand what really happened.
You seen that, the documentary, the 50 Cent?
No, I haven't seen it yet.
For Diddy?
I haven't seen it.
Oh, man, you working
Everybody
hard.
telling me you got to see it.
Yeah.
I haven't seen it.
Yeah.
Part of me don't want to see it.
You probably don't.
Because it's all skewed, man. Like, when you put stuff together, you create whatever narratives you want to. And at the end of the day, everybody being programmed. You know, right now, the man's serving time.
Right.
You know, he went before the court. The court said this and everything is God. But God said this is what he got to do. He got to do 5 years in pen. Let him do his 5 years.
December 28th, 1991. Diddy helped organize a celebrity charity basketball event at City College in New York. And what went down inside that building changed lives forever. This was supposed to be a major charity showcase. Heavy D was involved, big names were pulling up, and the energy was electric. Mike Tyson, LL Cool J. The place was packed wall to wall with people expecting something legendary. Gene says his security team was originally hired to manage the outside crowd. He brought 18 trained men, dogs, gates, the whole setup to keep things controlled. He knew how wild Harlem could get when celebrities showed up, so he prepared like a pro. But according to Gene, the day before the event, Diddy pulled him aside and told him Heavy D didn't want his team working security anymore. Just like that, Gene says his whole crew was removed. No outside security at all. So when the night finally hit, things spiraled fast. Thousands of people pushed toward the entrance. And when Mike Tyson and LL Cool J came through the front instead of using the back access, Gene says the crowd surged instantly, bodies pushing forward, stairwells turning into danger zones within seconds. Now here's a part the documentary didn't mention at all. Gene Deal says there was a promoter named Jessica Rosenblum working alongside Diddy and Heavy D that night. When the crowd began to surge, Gene claims Jessica panicked, but not about the people getting crushed in the stairwell. According to him, her focus was on the cash box from ticket sales. Gene says she grabbed the box and locked the door at the bottom of the stairs to protect the money. And when that door locked, it trapped hundreds of adults in a narrow stairwell with no space to move, breathe, or escape.
On December 28, 1991, Diddy helped organize a celebrity charity basketball event at City College in New York. What went down inside that building changed lives forever. The event was meant to be a major charity showcase, with heavy hitters like Heavy D involved, and big names like Mike Tyson and LL Cool J expected to show up. The place was packed wall-to-wall with people anticipating something legendary. Gene says his security team was originally hired to manage the outside crowd. He brought in 18 trained men, dogs, gates, and the whole setup to keep things under control. Knowing how wild Harlem could get when celebrities showed up, he prepared like a pro. However, according to Gene, the day before the event, Diddy pulled him aside and told him that Heavy D didn't want his team handling security anymore. Just like that, Gene says his whole crew was removed, leaving no outside security at all. When the night finally arrived, things spiraled quickly. Thousands of people pushed toward the entrance, and when Mike Tyson and LL Cool J arrived at the front instead of using the back access, Gene says the crowd surged instantly. Bodies began pushing forward and stairwells became dangerous zones within seconds. Here's a part the documentary never mentioned. Gene Deal says a promoter named Jessica Rosenblum was working alongside Diddy and Heavy D that night. As the crowd surged, Gene claims Jessica panicked, not because people were getting crushed in the stairwell, but because of the cash box from ticket sales. Gene says she grabbed the box and locked the door at the bottom of the stairs to protect the money. That locked door trapped hundreds of adults in a narrow stairwell with no space to move, breathe, or escape.
Jessica, you know what I'm saying? Jessica was the reason why those kids lost their life, because she locked the door on those kids running down the step. You understand? You could see her name in a news article, but they didn't mention nothing about her taking place, but they try to put Heavy D, God bless the dead, out there and they put Puff out there. You know what I'm saying? She should have been the main one because she is the one who locked the door on the kids. You understand? She is the one who locked the door on the kids, and all those kids lost.
That detail, if true, changes the entire timeline. 9 adults lost their lives that night, crushed in that stairwell after the crowd surged. Gene says he couldn't even reach the stairs because the crowd was packed so tightly. He had to circle the entire gym, find another entrance, and start forcing doors open from the inside. By the time he fought his way through, it was already too late. Gene also says he performed CPR on one of the victims, someone who was reported at the time as a teenage attendee, but sadly they didn't survive. Gene recalls the victim's older brother crying, saying, "This is the first time I ever took my little brother anywhere. My mom is going to kill me." Those moments, Gene says, are burned into his memory, and here's what still shocks people to this day. Jessica Rosenblum's name appears in old news reports as one of the event promoters, but she never faced any consequences. No charges, no accountability. The documentary skimmed over the City College tragedy, focusing almost entirely on Diddy and Heavy D. It never explored Jessica's alleged role, never explained why Gene's entire security team was removed the day before the event, and never mentioned a door being locked while 9 adults lost their lives. Gene says he tried to explain all of this in the documentary, every detail, every angle, but none of it made the final cut. Once you hear what happened behind the scenes, you really start to question why. Now, let's get into why Gene actually walked away from the project. The off-camera drama was just as wild as the stories he wanted to expose. Gene had set up a package deal for himself, Tim, and Kirk Burroughs, 3 men who understood Diddy from completely different angles. Tim knew the childhood and early career days, Kirk understood the business structure from the inside, and Gene had the street side covered, along with the security issues, the violence, the pressure, and the chaos behind the scenes. Together, they could have delivered the full, unfiltered timeline. But according to Gene, director Alex Stapleton started moving in a way that made him question everything. Gene says she told him the price he asked for was crazy money, as if his experience wasn't worth the budget. He even showed her invoices from past documentaries where he was paid in the same range, actual paperwork, and she still dismissed it. Then she dropped the line that really set him off. She told Gene that 50 Cent didn't control anything that went into the documentary. According to Gene, she said that 50 didn't decide the payouts, didn't approve who got included, and that his name was mainly being used to promote the project. Think about that for a second. The whole documentary was marketed as 50 Cent's big expose on Diddy, built on their rivalry and hyped around his brand. But behind closed doors, Gene was being told that 50 had no real creative power. That's wild. Gene felt played. He's been telling these stories for years on his own platform, and he's got the receipts, footage, photos, documents, and first-hand experience to back it all up.
That footage of Diddy.
I figured most journalists would not disclose their sources.
Does he know y'all have this in the doc?
I would doubt he knows.
So when this airs, that'll be the first time that his legal team, Diddy, that everybody knows that this footage is now seeing the light of day. Perhaps.
But
Gene says the director treated him like he didn't matter, like he was just another voice trying to jump into the spotlight. Meanwhile, Gene claims Kirk Burroughs was making his own quiet moves. Kirk kept calling Gene, pushing him to lower his price and accept whatever they offered. But Gene eventually found out that Kirk was negotiating a separate contract behind everyone's back, looking out for himself while pretending to still be part of the team. That's the industry for you. When money's involved, people start choosing their own lane. So Gene walked away completely, and that's why the documentary feels incomplete. That's why major stories never made it in. The one guy who had the deepest timeline, the receipts, and the inside access refused to participate because he felt disrespected from the start. A lot of viewers also noticed something else immediately. The documentary barely mentioned Kim Porter. Kim was Diddy's former partner and the mother of 3 of his children. She passed away in 2018 at just 47, officially from pneumonia. But her story raised questions because she had been around Diddy for years, witnessing everything: the parties, the business moves, the tensions, the lifestyle. Yet in the documentary, she gets only a quick mention before they move on. That struck many viewers as strange. According to multiple reports, the filmmakers avoided diving deeper into Kim's story because it was considered too sensitive and too risky to explore on camera. Gene says he knew Kim personally. He worked security around her, protected her during certain moments, and had his own experiences and information related to her life, but none of that made the final cut. They flashed a couple of photos of Kim, mentioned she was the mother of Diddy's children, and kept moving. For someone who played such a major role in his life, you'd expect a lot more coverage, unless there was a reason they didn't want that part of the story in the spotlight. Now let's dive into something that raises eyebrows. Diddy hosted massive parties for decades, packed with actors, artists, athletes, executives, and even political figures. These events were legendary. Everyone wanted an invite. That was Diddy's whole brand, the man who could get anyone in the room. So here's the question: why doesn't the documentary show any of those celebrities? No interviews, no commentary, nothing from the people who used to proudly show up at his events. For a story centered around nightlife and celebrity culture, the silence is strange. And why aren't there any real accounts of what went down at those parties? Are we supposed to believe that Diddy hosted huge events for years and not one well-known guest ever ended up in a situation worth mentioning? That doesn't sound realistic to a lot of people. Gene Deal believes some high-profile figures wanted to keep their names far away from anything connected to the investigation around Diddy. While it's speculation, some people think these celebrities may have requested or even paid to stay out of the spotlight to protect their careers, families, and reputations. Gene talks about this openly, but the documentary avoids it completely. From Gene's point of view, 50 Cent is a businessman first. He wasn't trying to drag unrelated celebrities into the mess. He wanted the documentary focused on Diddy, not on every person who ever showed up at a party. But if certain names were intentionally kept out, then what we saw was a polished, controlled version of events, a cleaned-up story to avoid pointing fingers at anyone with real power. Gene says he can see those gaps loud and clear. And speaking of celebrities staying quiet, look at Marlon Wayans' reaction to the documentary. When someone asked if he had seen it, his response had people talking. Marlon said he hasn't seen it and probably won't. Then he called it a narrative. He said, with the right editing, you can shape any story you want, and added, everybody's being programmed. That line made people raise their eyebrows immediately. Why would Marlon say that? Is he defending Diddy, suggesting the documentary is biased, or hinting he's seen things himself and doesn't want to get involved publicly? There have been whispered industry rumors about Marlon for years, nothing confirmed, just quiet talk. And when he refuses to watch the documentary and starts mentioning narratives and programming, it makes people wonder what he's really implying. Gene Deal says he has stories involving plenty of celebrities, things he witnessed personally, but many didn't want their names anywhere near the documentary. Their silence alone says a lot. Now let's talk about one of the most explosive parts of this entire situation, the private footage of Diddy before his arrest. This is the material that had everyone asking the same question: where did 50 Cent even get this? The documentary shows Diddy in a New York hotel room talking with his lawyer on speakerphone, reacting to the media strategy. NG trying to figure out his next move. These were super personal behind-the-scenes moments that were never meant to go public. According to what's been said, Diddy hired a videographer to document that entire period of his life. Maybe it was for a future project, maybe he wanted a record of everything happening. Nobody really knows the exact reason, but someone was definitely filming him nonstop. The key point here is that footage like that is typically considered Diddy's property. The videographer would have been under contract and NDAs, meaning none of it was supposed to leave Diddy's inner circle. But somehow 50 Cent ended up with it, and that's when everything exploded into a legal mess. Diddy's lawyers immediately sent Netflix a cease and desist, calling the footage unauthorized and insisting it was never meant for public release. They even demanded Netflix remove the entire documentary from the platform. Netflix pushed back, saying they got the footage through legal channels, but they didn't explain how, didn't name who provided it, and didn't share any details. And 50 Cent hasn't revealed the source either. That silence just made the whole situation feel even more mysterious. Meanwhile, the videographer hasn't spoken publicly, so nobody really knows how the footage got out. One theory is that he may have sold it because he allegedly wasn't paid. That's a rumor that floats around. Gene has said in interviews that Diddy sometimes had issues paying certain people on time, so some people think the videographer might have felt burned and decided to flip the footage as payback. Others speculate that someone connected to the project quietly leaked it, or that 50 obtained it through a third party. But again, all speculation, nothing confirmed. Whatever the truth is, the way that footage surfaced still feels shady to a lot of people, and it raises major questions about how the rest of the documentary was put together. Gene also talks about moments where he personally witnessed aggressive behavior from Diddy. Again, these are Gene's claims, not proven facts. One story he shares involves Missy Hilton, the mother of Diddy's first son, Justin. After Gene stopped working for Diddy, Missy allegedly asked him to protect her during nights out because she felt uncomfortable and worried about how Diddy might react if he saw her with someone else. Gene charged her $2,250 for a few hours of protection and told her straight up that if Diddy showed up, nothing would happen because Diddy knew Gene wasn't scared of anybody. The documentary features a segment with rapper-producer Eric Sermon. Eric describes a moment when he was in a car with Missy and Diddy allegedly confronted her. Eric claims Diddy swung at Missy and then told him to come around the corner to fight. Eric says he didn't engage. He just left and went to listen to music. Gene says that situation blows his mind because if someone was in his car and got confronted publicly like that, he would have stepped in immediately. He also says industry whispers about Diddy having issues with aggressive behavior had been circulating for years. Again, allegations and personal accounts, not court-proven facts, but many stayed quiet because Diddy had influence, connections, and serious resources. Gene brings these stories up because he believes they're important pieces of the puzzle, pieces the documentary didn't dig into. That's why he feels the public still hasn't heard the full picture. Then there's the hotel hallway footage of Diddy and Cassie, the clip that stunned the world, but Gene says that kind of behavior wasn't new at all. In his view, it had been going on for decades. The only difference this time was that the camera clip leaked, and that leak changed everything. So after all of this, what does Gene Deal actually think of the documentary? He says he watched it closely, took notes, and studied every angle. His reaction pretty harsh. Gene believes most of what the documentary covered was material insiders already whispered about: the wild nights, the controlling behavior, the messy incidents. To him, none of it was surprising. It was just packaged in a way regular viewers could finally understand. The only part Gene found genuinely interesting was that private footage of Diddy before his arrest, clips of him stressing, talking with lawyers, and trying to figure out his next move. Gene says that was the valuable material because the rest felt like surface-level storytelling meant for casual viewers. He says once you watch the documentary once, that's it. There's nothing deep enough to rewatch, nothing that digs into the roots or exposes the real machine behind the scenes, and Gene believes he could have taken the entire project to a different level. He had the depth, the stories, the receipts, the first-hand accounts, but in his opinion, they didn't want that kind of intensity on camera. From Gene's perspective, Netflix wanted something safe, something that would trend, pull big in. Umbers and focus everything on Diddy without dragging powerful people into the spotlight. Diddy is framed as the only villain in the story, but Gene says that's nowhere close to the full truth. According to him, plenty of people in those circles witnessed things, stayed quiet, or even participated in behavior that should have raised questions, and none of their names appeared in the documentary. Their identities stayed protected, their stories stayed hidden, and that's why Gene calls the project incomplete. He says the public got a slice of the truth while the bigger players stayed in the shadows. Here's what you need to understand. Gene Deal has been sharing these stories for years, long before Netflix, long before 50 Cent got involved. He's been on podcasts, interviews, YouTube shows, breaking down what he witnessed, what he lived through, and what he believes people deserve to know. He's been consistent and he's been loud about it. Now I want to hear from you. Which story hit you the hardest? Which part do you think 50 Cent should have included to make the documentary feel real and complete? Drop your thoughts in the comments and let's spark a real conversation about all this. Thanks for rocking with Mike Tripp. Make sure you like, subscribe, share, and comment to keep the channel growing. More deep dives are coming your way, so stay locked in and stay aware out there.